Grace to you and peace from God our Creator and Christ our Redeemer. Please be
Amen.
seated. In a world where we frequently hear concerns expressed about the future of the church in the face of declining attendance and a secularized world, it is easy to forget that these anxieties are nothing new. Every generation has experienced anxiety about the state of the church as they perceive the end to the way that things were before, and uncertainty about what the future holds. I'm reading through a wonderful little book at the moment, The Comfortable Pew, which is a uniquely Canadian analysis of the state of the mainline Protestant churches in the country. It was commissioned by the Anglican Church in Canada, hiring an independent journalist to help them figure out the root causes of declining membership and a diminished stature in the broader society. It was written in 1965. It is equally parts fascinating and distressing that the critique the author offers still holds up to this day, almost 60 years later. The problem the author identifies is that the church broadly, and the Anglican Church specifically, offered nothing, made itself irrelevant in the face of the major social and moral crises of the day, especially around nuclear proliferation and business ethics. To be clear, it's not that the church couldn't offer something substantive. It's not that it couldn't claim a moral voice and a teaching to address these urgent issues, but that it chose not to. It was an abdication by choice made in decisions big and small, aided by clergy who preached sweet nothings on Sunday mornings and by a national church too afraid to engage with difficult topics. It was as though the church as a whole had decided that our faith was only about the 2 hours or the hour or two that we spend in church on Sunday mornings. And outside those 2 hours, the church refused to speak, and a civic, secular faith spoke instead. To put it another way, on Sunday morning, we give to God what is God's, and the rest of the week, we give devotion to Caesar. As Jesus was teaching, he was approached by two unlikely allies, a group of Pharisees devoted to the purity of Jewish practice and law, and a group of Herodians who were supporters of King Herod and all that he represented of the Roman Empire. They were not the sorts who typically worked well together, but they approached Jesus side by side to try and ensnare him in a trap that they had devised. It was a seemingly simple question: is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not? If Jesus answered that it was, the Pharisees would have been enraged. If he answered it was not, the Herodians would have claimed sedition. But knowing what was in their hearts, Jesus responded to their question with a question of his own. Whose image does the coin bear? They pulled out a coin and showed that it bore the image of the emperor. Jesus' answer was simple. Then give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Give to God what is God's. In Jesus' words, we're eager to hear his permission to keep our faith and the rest of our lives in two separate spheres that rarely, if ever, meet. We show up on Sunday, or as convenient, to give to God what is due. But in our business dealings, we are shrewd and cutthroat because protecting shareholder value is sacrosanct. I was listening to a news story on the radio recently, and if I remember correctly, it was something about how Uber had been able to grow while losing money by taking advantage of the ultra-low interest rates after the recession in the late 2000s. Truthfully, though, what the story was about doesn't matter. What is important was a single line in the story. Money chases after higher returns. It is as though money were anything but an abstraction. It is as though money were a thing with a mind and a will of its own. So we think very little of investing in morally corrupt businesses. We think very little of business practices that devastate communities so long as they give good returns. It is, after all, what Caesar demands. We show up on Sunday mornings to give God what is due, but in the face of attempts to expand aid to minors and to those with mental illness, in the face of the woman who was offered aid when she checked into a hospital with suicidal thoughts, or the woman who opted for aid because she could not find adequate housing, our church stays silent. It stays silent because it is a difficult topic with lots of nuance. It stays silent because not everyone agrees. It stays silent because we are afraid to claim any moral authority, because we are too timid to even voice the gospel message that Christ came to heal the sick and cared for the vulnerable and fed the hungry and brought wholeness to the wounded and demanded that we do the same. Andrew Purves writes, if Christianity remains the cult of the private, the community, or the institution, it sanctions civil religion and ratifies the religious sanctification of society as it is. Or, to put it another way, we show up on Sunday to give God what is due, but the rest of the time, like Jesus said, we must give to Caesar what is Caesar's. At least that is the message we want Jesus to give us. It's the message we want to hear because it absolves us of the difficult parts of our faith. But that is not what Jesus does. Sure, give to Caesar what is Caesar, Jesus says to those who are listening so very closely to his words. But he did not leave it there. And give to God what is God's. What bears God's image? The coin they held before him bore the likeness of Caesar on it, but certainly no coins bore the image of God. It would have been forbidden. It would have been heresy. Rather, the whole of creation bears God's fingerprints, and nothing more so than you. You, my friends, are made in the image of God, each and every one of you, in all your diversity and variety, and you bear the image of God both individually and all together. Though Jesus' words at first seem like an easy division in the spheres of our lives, though we really want to hear them as an easy division between our faith and everything else, his words are anything but. Sure, give these coins to Caesar. But there is nothing that is not God's, most of all, you. And if you think you are not, if you think that you could not possibly bear the divine image, then perhaps you have not looked hard enough. This morning, we are welcoming new members into our community of faith here at St. Faith's. But what is that faith to which we welcome them? Is it a faith that is nice for Sunday mornings, but which has nothing to say about the rest of the week? Is it a faith that can only sanctify society as it is in all its brokenness because it does not believe it can do anything more? Or is it something else? Is it a faith that reorients the wholeness of our lives? Is it something that changes us, transforms us, and in doing so transforms the world around us? Is it a faith that brings the hope and the good news of the gospel message to a world broken and without hope? Is it a faith that brings healing and wholeness to all of creation and for all who bear God's image? My friends, this is the faith to which Jesus calls us as his disciples. This is the faith to which we welcome our newest members this morning, this is the faith that leads us back here our whole life long, so that we might be renewed and restored to carry it back into the world again.